3 sips of beer left from my beer.
You got to have another one ready to go, and especially of the same brand.
Well, there's when did we do? I had a beer 2 weeks ago, and I had 3 left. Now I have 1 left because this is the second of those. Haven't been getting to them very diligently.
We have slightly different levels of work with our drinking consumption. That's how we get these late shows, EMac.
Yeah. Well, my wife's doing keto, so she doesn't do the bears anymore.
So that's the intro to the show. EMac's wife is doing keto, and we are here for the late Slate Sweat and Swap show, ready to talk 1 more hour of basketball, 1 more hour of our great friend Kenyon Porter Jr., who brought us all to the promised land yesterday. We'll talk more about him in a second. I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who, again, very proud of his wife for going keto. I'm proud of her too. He's your old pal, EMac. How are you doing, EMac?
I'm doing well. Hey, I have keto every night for dinner. The other meals, not so much. Still go with the carbs. So tonight we had a lovely spaghetti squash Alfredo with chicken. Spaghetti squash being the stand-in for pasta, but we eat lots of vegetables anyway, so that's no big deal at all for me. But it's just kind of funny because now I realize how many chips I go through or how much ice cream I'm eating. So
I'm in the same boat where I previously had really good runs with eating keto, like intermittent fasting and keto. And now I think with the quarantine, especially with the work, with all the stuff we have going on, I just do not have it in me anymore to do that. And, being in a relationship probably doesn't help either, but spaghetti squash, greatly underrated. If you're trying to go keto out there, like spaghetti squash, I feel like a little bit confusing to make the first time, but I feel like it's pretty close to pasta in a way that I appreciate.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. And I mean, by the time you're done, everything's got heavy cream and butter and all sorts of cheese. It's like, oh, this is great. And you're like, yeah, but you're not all supposed to have all the carbs on top of it. So, tomato.
An important part of any strategy. And that's what we're here for at Awesemo, where we are part of your DFS strategy. Some could say the spaghetti squash of DFS, where it's only increasing in value by the year. But one thing you guys can do for yourselves right now is go to awesemo.com/join and use the promo code Shamrock, because that deal is going on for, I believe, 5 more days, going up until the great Irish day of St. Patrick's Day, where we'll all be wearing green. Tyler cheering in the background, not knowing that he's going to have to do his impressions that he did for us yesterday at some point in the show, but we are celebrating our Irish friends with the promo code Shamrock at awesemo.com/join. Go there now. It's $15 for a full week of Awesemo Plus access, and that's all the sports on there: NBA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports, and college basketball projections that I basically use every time to promote our friend Matt Kajeski, who I miss seeing regularly on the YouTube channel with his delightful tuna cans and Four Locos and all the other things here. But really a lot of things at your fingertips if you use that promo code Shamrock at awesemo.com/join for a week off of our Awesemo Plus packages. And shout out to OddsShopper as well, oddsshopper.awesemo.com. If you are making any bets, you should be checking OddsShopper every day, because you can shop for rates on there. You can also see ROI and win percentages for prop bets. It's a really useful tool for yourself. And we've seen the edge a lot of days on the tip-off with our pal Goldberg Ben Rasa going undefeated on every day on his Ben Rasa prop bet of the day. Dr. Ben Rasa, as his friends call him. But make sure you're really checking out all the prop bets at oddsshopper.awesemo.com. Let's talk about what is it? What my boy Spags is hatting? I'm hatting? What?
I think you're hating something.
Am I hating or am I hatting? Because I could go either way. I feel like I am pretty hatting. Let's talk EMac.
Wait, is this a new word that I'm not aware of? Like trill?
I saw Alex pronounce season as season earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, that's classic Alex. Like, and I found it charming, but I wasn't sure if he was just doing it ironically or if he was leaning in. You never know with Alex. That's the man that
it's too hard. You want to see the driest of dry senses of humor. It's Alex Baker.
Let's talk about the main slate first, as we always do, where we try to talk about some of the observations going on. And one take that I'm gonna, as a tout, one skill that honestly I lack relative to some of our peers out there, some of the guys we've had on the channel before historically as well, is that I don't really make a point, EMac, to talk about my successes too much. But Zion Williamson, one take that I had today on the Live Before Lock show, had yesterday as well, is lack of assist upside and court time without JJ Redick jumped out as really meaningful to me. And I mentioned on the show today, like, you're never never going to go wrong playing Zion. He's a monster. He could put up 50 real life points at this point and starts to rebound a little better. He's got 17 real life points in 12 minutes, but no assists for him, EMac. And I just feel like this is something that sometimes people miss. I know on this show, we talk a little bit more about the rate data because we kind of have room to expand and dig deeper on the stuff. But Zion tonight, did you play him a good amount, or did you heed my warnings about him just being a little bit less effective, a little bit less of the point Zion that all the media has been loving to talk about without his pal JJ Redick out there, a guy who is a very popular partner for him in the pick and roll and the DHOs and all of the downhill games that Zion does best?
22% Zion is where I landed. Let's see where the field probably is. It wasn't someone I was really intentionally going over on. The field's at 10, so apparently I'm doubling, or 10 to 15, depending on the contest sizes. I play in the smaller leagues, so sometimes those can swing depending on which 400-man league I click on, but it looks like I'm above the field. I'm okay with it. I felt so here was mine, and I heard you mention that, and I think that was an astute observation. He is up to 9,100. This is something that, along with his recent success, have been some minutes. So I'm going to go backwards to the last couple before the break, but 31, 38, 34, 35, 37, 31, 40. Those are some nice runs, but that's also coinciding with some of his better scores. I'm just looking to see, and in most of those games, he had 4, 5, or 6 assists. On the season, he's averaging 3.4, and that was something that we were hoping we would get a little bit of a breakout there on. He's also right around maybe 2 points above, 3 points above his point average. And then everything else more or less looks in line. A few more rebounds, which the rebounds are going to be a little bit variant because, if he gets the offensive ones and the dunks, that's great. But as we've said countless times, he's competing with both the guards that he plays with. All three of them actually are decent rebounders to above average. And then you got Steven Adams and you got Brandon Ingram, et cetera. So he'll get there. I don't think he's turned 20 yet, or he's about to. So this is emerging territory. But I did like what you were thinking when you mentioned that. And those are the little tiebreakers that I think we can sometimes miss, which come dramatically into play on the big slates, or probably the small slates like this, where we're really looking for that edge. And one of the ones you look at is, I can't remember, contested threes or side threes or something, just where you know that some of the teams may have a certain mismatch. And that's something where you can uncover the Kentavious Caldwell Pope or whomever that may be. That might be the diamond in the rough for the night.
And sometimes it is, I think a lot for me too is, obviously the edge you're going to have on a given slate is relying on good projections. That's why the ownership projections, the regular projections, the boom bust tool that Awesemo.com has is going to be the most important part of your process, and trusting that every night and going back and, and looking at it, quizzically every day when you're wondering about how, hey, is this guy going to be as valuable as it seems? But when you have a system you're relying on every day, that's the most important part. But I think when you can merge data with, larger sample sizes, especially, and figure out things that people aren't trusting, especially when looking at median projections, Zion can still go off today, but I think if he becomes just a pure points dependent scorer, you're probably seeing more of a 40 fantasy point Zion instead of a 50 fantasy point Zion. And that can mean a big difference when he is expensive as he is on DraftKings. And you have so many different ways to go there. So if he goes off the second half, we'll see a 20-point lead here for New Orleans heading into halftime against Cleveland. EMac, how are you feeling about your lineup so far? Was there anything you feel like you did right? Anybody you're disappointed by? And I'll lead you into it with saying, like, Colin Sexton, I thought would have a little better run here without Darius Garland, a 30% assist rate guy who also the usage is going up too. Obviously, whenever there's an opportunity, Colin Sexton's usage is going to go up. But I feel like besides that, I really haven't had any outlier performances so far that we're missing out on, like the Jeremy Grants we had yesterday. Does anything jump out to you from what you've seen so far, EMac?
No, I mean, we've only got 3 games and they're all at the half. So unlike, and because of the late start, we don't quite have hey, we're midway through the third quarter, rounding into the fourth quarter games. I guess Jackson Hayes having 20 fantasy points, but guess what? Nobody rostered him. So no worries there. Tobias Harris is halfway on his way to a 40 fantasy point game. I'll take it. Russell Westbrook is doing solid. He's someone that I wrote up liking him with or without Beal. On these, we talked about some of in my DFS building blocks article, I mentioned that he actually is outproducing. You look at Admore Fund's NBA Wowie, he is outproducing Bradley Beal on a per minute basis. And he actually, with Beal on the court, is like 1.3 FanDuel points per game. And without him, he's like 1.37. which is still pretty good. Not that many minutes without Beal, obviously, because Beal has only missed 2 games. So the rest of the time, Beal plays heavy minutes, and Westbrook's alongside him for most of them. But I found that to be interesting. And we like guards that are going to drive and attack the rim against Philadelphia. They essentially have the same personnel they've had for the last couple of years. And even though Joel Embiid is a nice defensive presence, we've seen time and time again, the guards that take it to the hole can do okay against Philly, which is both Westbrook and Beal. So Westbrook, I felt wasn't going to quite get the love. I'm kind of glad that Beal played because I was still maintained my Westbrook. Too early to victory lap this. If he gets 49, 50 fantasy points, that's not a victory lap. That's okay, solid. That's about what I thought. I need him to get, 57, 58 before I'm like, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about. So
one play that I
don't
felt
ever say that anyway.
About,
so.
Or not to cut you off. I thought you were
like you. It's like
down.
when was the last victory lap I took? I don't remember.
That's what we have to do more in the show. We have to extol the virtues of things, and I think too sometimes when we're doing the shows, like there was something I noticed when I was doing the show with Terry earlier, and I know EMac will be back with Terry tomorrow for the Saturday live before lock, and I'll be leading into that with Rinpack. So that'll be a star-studded deeper dive and live before lock coming up tomorrow. Thanks to our friends at Super Draft. But one play that, and I think this is something EMac we just talk about real fast and then talk more about the late slate, though. At this point, you've probably heard enough about these games. Nothing materially has changed so far. But Steven Adams was a guy I had no clue I had 29% of, and he's playing as well as Jackson Hayes, which normally doesn't sound like it'd be good news, but 20 fantasy points at halftime for both guys, and both guys also rebounding a lot more than Zion. So that's something that could be a bit of an inhibitor to Zion when he's not getting the assist upside. But I feel like it's one of these things that as a host that we just don't hit on enough or don't get to talk about enough because we're so busy trying to give you guys the best plays and keep up with the news and all of that. But I felt like I said it live on the show, and I was like, oh God, people are going to think I'm an asshole because I played 30% at Steven Adams. And now it's like, hey, I want you guys to all know what a genius I was when I didn't even know it for playing so much Steven Adams. And I want to victory lap that to have it in the record books.
Yeah, I have 0 Steven Adams. So.
How could you? Fading Steven Adams against the Cavaliers? Who does that, EMac?
I don't know, but I need somebody with a New Zealand accent to kind of chastise me.
Hey, Tyler, do you have a mic there? Do you want to jump on? What would Steven Adams think about me playing him 30% against the field today, Tyler? Tyler's not even going to the mic. Come on. Tyler's got to. You guys have no idea. So yesterday, if you missed the show, I was doing my Australian accent, just my half-assed one. I wasn't committing to it enough. And then when we got off the air, Tyler was just flexing on EMac and I, giving us quality impressions from all over the globe. And Tyler's a Texas boy, which I think is interesting. So now I'm waiting for him to get on mic as he ruins the show.
What do you want me to say, Spags?
Give me an Australian, a New Zealand accent of Steven Adams, who's proud of me for playing him on today's slate.
Okay, well, I'm going to do Australian because they sound the same to me. But good job there, mate. You did it, Spagsy. You played enough of me on the slate today, and it looks like you may make some money. But, you're kind of unlucky sometimes, so don't get too excited.
There's Tyler, what if Steven Adams were Irish? What do you think he'd have to say in this moment?
Well, I think that he'd say you should use code Shamrock at checkout for half off the Awesemo weekly price.
See, Tyler's
I love that. Look at Tyler. He's been listening to you and I do the reads for a long time now. He knows how to segue right into that. What a company man.
What a pro. We appreciate both Tyler and Jordan, two of our regular producers, Chris, one of our other producers as well, who's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, but we kind of make it fun here. And Tyler is a multi-talented guy. We're all so diversely talented here at Awesemo. So smash the like button for Tyler and hit it for us too, because we got about 230 people in here. If we get to 100 likes, or you guys know how I do things, I'm going to give you guys the top 5 owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel for the night slate at the halfway point of the show. But hit the like button here to help us out. This show in particular, we need some more love because honestly, people don't know it exists. Sometimes the tweets don't even go out from the main handle, and I gotta take it into my own hands and put it out there. But that's the nature of the beast here. The little engine that could is the late slate sweat and swap. So hit the like button now, tell a friend, and come back every night because we do this 5 nights a week, an hour before whenever the last big slate is, whether it be a multi-game slate or a showdown. So come hang out, and of course subscribe, at the notification bell to see all of our content. But smash that like button and I'll give you guys the top 5 owned plays coming up in about 15 minutes. EMac, let's get more into this late slate. And, swapping wise, I guess we got the news that Damian Jones will be starting. He's been pretty ineffective so far. So I think that's something that Really doesn't matter too much to the overall opportunity on the slate, though. Maybe he sees a few more minutes going against Indiana's big front court. But swap optimizing wise, EMac, anything in these last two games that you feel like you need to get to more, I guess, if you're trying to get away from the Houston ownership that we've talked about all day. Kevin Porter Jr., one of the chalk plays everywhere you will find today. Kenyon Martin Jr. also going to be owned. Is there anything swap optimizer wise you would even consider doing at this point, EMac?
No, because the only thing I would even remotely consider is going away from some of the Houston guys. I'm already massively overweight to the field. I have like 92%, I think, Porter Jr., which was really not my intent, but that's where I ended up. A field we think is going to come around 80, maybe 85% on DK. I'm just playing on DK tonight, but I'm also playing multiple sports, multiple formats, and all the slates. So there we go with that. But it's one of those things where I guess I'm going to let it ride with that one. There's no surprises that Houston can do anything that is going to make me change anything. The fear I have in the DFS building blocks, the one thing I did caution, and we talked about this last night, there's a chance they don't have enough players to have a functional offense. And now they don't have Christian Wood, who's been out forever, no Victor Oladipo, no John Wall. The hell are they going to do? I mean, we're down to guys that they had two guys make Michael Porter Jr. made his debut last night for them. And then Kevin Porter.
I wasn't going to correct you.
I'm not going to call him Otto Porter. How do we have three Porter Juniors in the league? That
actually is kind of surprising. That's too many, and none of them related to Terry Porter, which I think just upsets me.
Which is that is also a little bit of a concern. But in any event, this is one of those where what are we going to see? What's going to happen? So let me call up my information here. But basically, they're on a 14-game losing streak. Houston, that is. In their last 7 games, they've been blown out by 15 or more points 5 or 6 times. The other 2 games, twin 11-point losses. And now I'm going off memory because my article is not coming up. But one was a second loss to Cleveland, and then one I think was a loss to Philly, if I remember correctly. But the whole point is we've seen them blown out to the point where they're just like mailing it in. They can't mail it in because they don't have enough players at this point. However, they can be out there, and we saw him score 38. You were right, it was Memphis. We saw him score 38 points and a half, and they did have Wall in that one. And while Oladipo and Wall have played in most of these losses, at least one, if not both of them, now they're all out. So the big fear is now they're at altitude, back-to-back, guys who have, barely sniffed the NBA for much, and we're counting on them. That makes me really, really, really nervous. So the ones I wanted to call out here. So Eric Gordon's out with the groin injury. We know that. David Nwaba, I think, had wrist surgery. I've seen conflicting reports, but I think he already had his wrist surgery and is supposed to be out for up to 6 weeks. So that's why I think the coach said he's available but can't do anything basketball related or some cryptic thing like that. I've caught Adam mentioning something along those lines. There, you don't have Danwell House out with the knee, Rodions Karuk's out with an oblique, and those guys are NBA players. PJ Tucker gave him the nah wave. So, Adam was saying, do they make him active? So I had to get after him on Twitter and say, is PJ Tucker working remotely tonight? Because is he going to be active and not in Utah?
Yeah, he's zooming in. He's going to be honestly probably as many fantasy points per minute if he is.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So last night, Anthony Lamb made his NBA debut. Kevin Porter made his first appearance for Houston. Yesterday's starters. These are actual regular starters now for Houston. Deshaun Tate and Justin Patton. They have 51 games combined in the NBA under their belt. That's not good. So now we're down to Ben McLemore. Oh, okay. Sterling Brown. That's it. That's their most accomplished players. Yeah. Ouch.
It's not pretty, but the thing though is it's still not a lot of guys. I mean, and that's with David Nwaba questionable here. I think he might be active but not play minutes. It's sort of going to be hit and miss. Somebody's asking about Mason Jones. I know Awesemo had Mason Jones projected for I believe 25 minutes. Let me just make sure because that might have changed here.
Yeah, I didn't mention Mason Jones because I couldn't this morning when I was writing the article. I couldn't find any confirmation that he was actually with the team. Wasn't he waived or something? Or I couldn't tell if he was a 2-way contract guy that contract expired and they needed. It was just like, I'm not finding information on him. So I guess
he was waived and got re-signed to a 10-day deal because they knew they were running low on bodies. Was basically what it was. And he knows the offense and all of that. So Yeah, but as EMac mentioned, I'll just give you guys the minutes for Houston, so I guess you can get a read on it. And this is Awesemo's minutes projections. Obviously, can change here if David Nwaba gets rolled in. That's going to move some things around. But he has Kevin Porter Jr. projected for just under 34 minutes, Jay Sean Tate for over 33, Mason Jones for a rounded up 25 minutes, Ben McLemore for 30 minutes, Anthony Lamb for 22 minutes. I mentioned earlier in the live before lock for Anthony Lamb, he doesn't even have stats on Basketball Reference, so I just gave him Justin Holidays and said, close enough. And that was the end of my day. And in the last Houston Rocket, Justin Patton projected right now for 29.8 minutes. So rounded up 30 for him. And he hasn't been the most useful. And I honestly don't love him, but 29.8 minutes makes him pop up well enough. And I don't want to tease the ownership too much here, but I'll just give it to you guys straight away because I think it is informative for DraftKings, in particular for the night slate. 99% Kevin Porter Jr. expected on the night slate. And I love Kevin Porter Jr. I talked on the earlier show that even with him being 85% owned, I just knew with my process I wasn't going to get under 100% of him. So I just locked him in on Fantasy Cruncher. Not something I usually do, but when it seems like a guy's unavoidable, I'd rather just get the best 500 lineups with those guys, or best 1,000 lineups in across a couple crunches with that guy in there. And, Kevin Porter Jr., I feel like for the night slate, the plus EV move has to be to just not play him, and then just play as many other Rockets as you want and just hope that he somehow fails. Maybe they send double teams out after him, which they were doing yesterday with Sacramento. I don't know how much I trust that, but that was with Oladipo and Gordon on the floor, or at least Gordon on the floor. They were setting doubles at Porter Jr. because he was just amazing as an assist man yesterday, in addition to getting his own shot. But EMac, for a night slate where Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be 99% owned, do you view him as a free square, or do you think that just be the 0.4% and hope you could somehow beat him in a lineup without Kevin Porter Jr.?
So I'll probably go, and I'll have to cap him at around 70%, which means I'll get about 85% by the time I pull the lineups together. I don't quite do the elaborate sorting process that you guys do, but I do make some tweaks towards the end that can sometimes skew the popularity or the ownership of my player pool unintentionally. And that's sort of what happened tonight, because I was only going to go with 80% of Porter, but then by the time I pulled in the various crunches and other things I wanted to do, he was in a lot more than that. I like to sort of cap these on the turbo slates, because I figure if I have just and I call this is the two or three gamers, or what I consider the turbo slates, I've done pretty well, because what it allows me to do is then put that onto other players and easily get above the field on them, because everybody's so heavily concentrated somewhere. So generally I like to run no more than 60 to 70% of people in the same lineups. And then what I attempt to do on some of these shorter slates is try to do some more, not full game stacking, but getting, one or two key players on each side. And then if it's a close game, then I'm doing okay. I'm not trying to play for the overtime or anything like that. But for example, I would pick LeBron and Sabonis for this one. The weird thing is, what do we do with the Utah understudies? Because our whole hope is that the starters, would this be a shocking score for you? 53-35 at the half. And then Utah.
You're saying Houston has a 35, right?
No. Yeah, Houston has a 35. Okay. So then Utah comes out, they play the first half, third quarter, and now they go on a 25-8 run. And now they're up by 30 points. This is none of these are extreme, unlikely occurrences. And now we get the bench players. That's the chance the Houston Rockets have to do well, because they're playing limited minutes now against inferior or they're limited players playing a lot of minutes against the inferior competition. So I think that's their path to success, in my opinion. I mean, doesn't Houston sort of just have to drop the hammer on this one and get their guys some rest? Maybe if you're Quinn Snyder, would that you just play regular up till the midway through the third quarter and then be like, all right, all in a day's work, fellas. Thanks.
That's just never been how they do things, especially at home. So that's sort of where I'm a little bit perplexed.
There's no crowd.
I know, but that's
and we haven't seen a. Okay, but
does Utah have fans or not? Because that actually does seem vaguely relevant. I didn't look it up between the two shows.
I'll look. I'll look.
Yeah, let's see. So Utah, one thing that they're known for is historically Quinn Snyder has played his starters deeper into the fourth than you would think, even in blowouts. But that's been largely because they have their passionate, occasionally racist fan base who says awkward things to players. But they are diehard fans out in Utah, and I think that's obviously a vocal minority. I'm just ribbing here, my old pal Vernon Maxwell of the mid '90s Rockets, who hates Utah fans very much on Twitter and hilarious.
They've moved from 1,500 to now are allowing 4,000. 1,000.
So you're getting more people in there. I think you just see the starters play a little bit more because that's what they've done.
And tonight they're upping it from 4 to 5,600.
Oh, so that's 5,600 high energy.
I mean, that's like a 20% increase,
Yeah. I think that they do play these guys a little bit more than people might expect. And I think too, this is something that's worth pointing out is that I know it's an 18-point spread and honestly might be higher in some spots. I haven't updated my sheet with that because I presume it's not getting much better for Houston at this point. 18-point spread game, that's a lot, but also an 18-point spread can hit in the fourth quarter. Like they could start to pull away. Maybe Houston shoots the lights out in the first 3 quarters. And that's really their pathway here. I referenced it before, but Detroit, when they had no Jeremy Grant, when they had no Josh Jackson, when they had no Delon Wright, they did was just spread the ball around and try to get shooters open. There aren't a lot of great knockdown shooters for Houston in the lineup. Ben McLemore shoots 38%. I guess that's really the best one here. You have Jayshawn Tate shooting 35. Sterling Brown's not a bad shooter either. So maybe that's the pathway here for this to make sense. But that's really, to me, I just think assuming that Houston can't get there or that they're going to get blown out, even if they do get blown out, like let's say they're down 30 in the third quarter, like who plays for that final 5, EMac? Like it's still got to be, you're going to get Anthony Lamb in instead of maybe Jayshawn Tate, but like Kevin Porter Jr. might have to play the full game. KJ Martin Jr. probably plays the full game regardless because he just hasn't seen enough minutes on the year. Sterling Brown maybe doesn't play, but I just feel like even in blowout minutes, these guys have to play a lot of run, even though, like they're probably shaving a few minutes off of, the guys who are normally starters.
Yeah, and that absolutely makes sense, and that on the Houston side is what I think. But playing that through, who do we think gets some potential mop-up duty for the Jazz? We really don't see it as much, even though they have one of the better records in the league and generally control their games. We don't know that. Oh yeah, because is it really going to be Jordan Clarkson? I don't think so. Is it? Maybe that Conley goes to the bench earlier, right? Keep him healthy. Does that mean it's going to be Ingles a little bit more? Is it Donovan Mitchell? I don't know. It's not like he can't be there. I would suspect Gobert goes out, but they're going to jam minutes for Derek Favors on his 4th tour with Utah? Probably not.
Yeah, they probably would go to maybe Brantley. Ilyasova's now, they signed him too. I don't know how many.
But does he have to do quarantining? I wondered about that because we could have Ursanity. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, I like Ursan conceptually, but that's right. It's something that he's getting minutes in Awesemo's projections, but I guess there is a chance that maybe he honestly could go either way, where maybe he is available. And we don't have this news. Ursan Ilyasova news, not the hottest off the presses normally. And we got about 5 minutes left here till the halfway point of the show. Now over 300 people in the chat. So smash that like button, guys. Get us a respectable amount of likes here. It'll give you guys top 5 owned plays for the night slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. I feel like 29 more likes. You guys can do that. Band together as a community. And also in chat too. I feel like people are warring in chat right now. We're all in this, whether we're hosts or you guys in chat. We're all in this just trying to make money off of the night slate, trying to not have Kevin Porter Jr. blow up in our faces. So just don't be too angry at each other. It's just
why are we angry in chat? It's Friday night. Come on.
It's true. Yeah, where EMac and I are going to be blitzed by the end of this.
My one beer, it's gone. There is no more.
Oh no.
There's one more downstairs, maybe for tip off of the next game. Otherwise, I'm having some delicious ice water.
Oh boy, EMac, what a
no calories.
EMac is, chat. Don't hit the like button for EMac's respectable drinking. How dare he? But yeah, no. But really though, chat, don't get angry at each other. We have a lot of regulars in here. Some of them, not Jacob in the chat, but some of them I find irksome too. But we just gotta remember at the end of the day that we're all trying to make this work together. So just try to be tolerant of each other and be respectful of each other and all that, because that's honestly the best help we get. And that's another reason too, be a part of the premium Slack at Awesemo. It's part of the Shamrock package, part of any of our express packages at awesemo.com/join too. People are there, they sometimes get testy, sometimes get defensive on there, but at the end of the day, it's just guys talking about basketball all day long, talking about all the other sports as well, and talking about Top Shot all day long too in that channel. But that's really what it is. And you're playing DFS, you can both win money together. You can all win money together for the most part. We're not, not every person playing in tournaments is on these shows. So that would be my little feedback for you guys. Rest of the Rockets, EMac, let's talk through them a bit more. Are you as bullish on KJ Martin / Kenyon Martin Jr. / Kenyon Martin today? Because I feel like minimum salary on DraftKings, he's going to be fairly owned again on the night slate, but not quite as owned as Kevin Porter Jr. and some of the other chalk plays. Actually, one other chalk play will be ahead of him, though, at a completely different price point. But how are you feeling about Kenyon Martin Jr., a player who has rebounded fairly well in his limited time, 19% usage rate, 15% rebound rate, hasn't done much in the way of assists, but guy does a little bit of everything in the limited sample size we've had. So is he a core play for you for the night slate or one that you're trying to get away from?
So first question, completely off script. Is he the first son of a father-son combination we have been able to play since the existence of DFS? Because I went and looked up Kenyon Martin Sr. I believe his last season in the league was 2014.
As you mean where you could play both the dad and the son during the time periods these sites have existed?
Yes. I don't think there was anybody else that was overlap because Glenn Robinson, I guess Glenn Robinson Jr., because we're on Glenn Robinson the third now, that was before, I think he finished before DFS.
Yeah,
and I can't think of it.
Not close enough for Jeremy.
Yeah, and so I can't think of any. I mean, Trent Tucker's dad was way before.
Yeah, I think you might be right. This actually might be a landmark moment. So your team KJ Martin then just play him because it's a moment in history in NBA DFS.
So that's not that should run us one way or the other, but I thought about that earlier and I was like, oh, is this officially the first one that I can kind of remember potentially having happened? Because Kenyon Martin was still relevant in the last couple of years. He played in the league in a few moments here and there that we would have played him in DFS. I feel like, end of the season, somebody got hurt. He'd be a last guy in, something like that. Never a primary play at that point. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Here's a funny chat from Matthew here. Kenyon talked to his dad last night. Time to turn up with a lot of flame emojis. Like, I assume he talks to his dad fairly often. I would think as a pro player. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. We're at 87 likes right now. I'm confident you guys are going to get us to 100 while I give you guys the top 5 on plays. And then we'll talk some more about Kenyon Martin Jr. and refresh the ownership. But it's money time. I'll flip the hat too. Thank you, Tyler. Always good with the sound effects. Kevin Porter Jr. We mentioned it on DraftKings. Number 1 projected owned player, 99.2%. Number 2, LeBron, 88.1%. Number 3, KJ Martin Jr. is what we have in Awesemo screen, but it's also Kenyon Martin, 72% rounded up. Number 4, Rudy Gobert at 68%. And number 5, Ben McLemore, who had a decent day yesterday, 54%. EMac out of this top 5 for DraftKings, Kevin Porter Jr., LeBron, Kenyon Martin Jr., Gobert, and McLemore. Do you see yourself wanting to be a lot under one of these guys? And if you want to segue it back to Martin Jr., you can.
So I think I'll try to come in 15-20% under Martin Jr. I'll probably try to do the same for Porter Jr. And then I can't in good conscience recommend Ben McLemore under any circumstances, even those as dire as this. So those would be the 3 guys I'd look to go under on. We'll see how we're constructing. I'm putting together my tiers lineup right now, so I don't have to worry about salary, but I'll be on to the salary cap in just a second here, and I will let you guys know where it's shaking out for me, because I think that's sometimes helpful. Because sometimes what we say and then what we end up having to do, 2 different things, right?
Yeah,
once
they
the
move
numbers
around.
come together. Yeah.
They always, it's a changing process always, and it should be when you have the data, especially ownership projections. Like if those move meaningfully, that could change a lot of things for how you should be approaching your lineups. We'll do the FanDuel top 5 too, and then we'll talk more about McLemore and Martin Jr. LeBron, number 1 on FanDuel, 97% on FanDuel. So he's the Kevin Porter Jr. of FanDuel, but probably a player you should be having on both sides, I would think. And we've got a question in chat about that as well, so we can hit on that next. Sabonis, 89% on FanDuel. He's number 2. Donovan Mitchell, number 3 at 83%. Number 4, Malcolm Brogdon at 63%. And number 5, Rudy Gobert at 62%. Kevin Porter Jr., not as much of a necessity on FanDuel. He is number 6 here, so you get a freebie as well. Rounded up 62% for him. EMac, out of that 5, I feel like I wouldn't nickel and dime any of these guys. Positionality-wise, they all make sense to me. I like LeBron, Sabonis, Mitchell, Brogdon, Gobert. Do you see anything wrong with that grouping or any over-owned guys amidst that grouping of 5?
What do you think that the temperature check is for Gobert? Let's ask the chat. Chat, do you think Gobert is a decent play? a marginal play. I mean, he could easily get a double-double in his first rotation. I mean, who's he going against? Nobody. Does anybody come up to, I'm joking now, but does anybody come up to his shoulder on the Rockets? I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. And they certainly can miss a lot of shots too, which I think is a situation that can result in more rebounds for him. So I think on FanDuel especially, I get it, because your other center options are going to Miles Turner, going to Montrezl Harrell, going to Justin Patton. I think Gobert is a mile above really any of those guys. You know, you could take the variance for a tournament, but I think Gobert is clearly the center play.
And I think so. He kind of rivals. So he is in the top 3, I guess, right? With him, Sabonis, and LeBron. Is that where we're coming down for raw points?
Let's see, for raw points on FanDuel or in general.
Just in general, either side's fine.
I think for the projection, so Awesemo has Gobert for 40.3. He's got Sabonis for 47. So, but these are DK points, so that's a little bit different. And obviously, they're not the same position on FanDuel.
Yeah, and LeBron we've got at 53, but those would be the top 3. And there's nothing that says, LeBron can have a bad game or, then, Donovan Mitchell nails, 7 3-pointers. All of a sudden he's going to be the guy that's in the top 3. But that's just kind of interesting that I think some people might be dismissing Gobert a little earlier than they really should.
Jokic having a nice day. So for Jokic, outscoring Embiid is going to be a frustrating situation for me, even though I got enough Jokic, but not as much as Embiid. Let's see. If Gobert is a high temperature, please keep him away from the microphone. Yeah, that's probably a good rule of thumb.
Are they going to have a moment of silence before the game?
I'm sure not. Sure, they would like everybody to forget that immediately if they can.
Is he touching any microphones?
It's funny though, because they did have all those reports after that happened where like, oh, Donovan Mitchell doesn't trust him now. They might not be able to repair the relationship. And now they're the best team in the NBA through the start of this season and clearly have figured it out. So that shows how much you should buy into. We talk a lot about narratives here, but if there were a narrative, there were a lot of media reports about that. And it seems like it went the exact opposite way. So probably decent proof to not buy in too much in the narrative game. No, we don't usually discuss the showdown, but Spags, we were rocking a captain. I didn't put in a showdown lineup, but I'll just look real fast on.
I'm assuming they're doing the second game, right, for the showdown.
I would think it's the Laker game. But yeah, it's a Laker game at 7:30. Actually, you have 50K in that tournament, so honestly would have been one worthwhile. I'm just gonna scan through real fast. I mean, LeBron's gonna be the chalk captain. I think that's fairly obvious.
I would lean towards Sabonis to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sabonis. I think you can make an argument for Brogdon, and
then the next guy for me is going to be Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like Miles Turner at captain either. Yeah, I mean, LeBron's really obvious ones. And one move that you can always make in showdowns is to not take the highest owned captain. You're going to lose sometimes, but more often than not, it's not going to kill you. So I would say don't. Oh, Embiid is down and in pain. There you go. There goes the news god. You can't. Tyler, bad sound effect.
That is not cool. We have protocols here. Pause. Tyler, I want you to reflect and think about this for a moment.
Big Chungus saying, who is going to stop Turner? Harold D is terrible. Turner might not do anything. He's not a high usage guy. It's not like, it's not like Joel Embiid before he apparently died before our eyes in a game that I'm not watching now. Oh no. I had the game open they're pulling out a stretcher. Oh, this is not good.
Oh man.
Standing up, but there is a stretcher out on the floor.
Wait, does he have to go to the bathroom?
I would like to formally apologize to chat for the sound effect if he's on a stretcher.
Tasteless sound effect. He's limping. He doesn't seem to need the stretcher. He's walking now. I mean, look, they're up 20, honestly. Like, for my DFS lineups aside, I don't know why you'd push Embiid today in this spot when you're a potential championship team. Was it on a screen? Oh no, it was on a little handoff play and a dunk. Oh, that's bad. It was planting on the dunk. That's not great. Well, you got to hope it's a tweak on that one. Sorry, just watching this play as it happens to get a read on it, but definitely not great.
Well, I mean, it plays into the swapping time. I mean, are you going to try to get different? What if he caps out at 40 DK points right now? We already know there's a couple centers that are ahead of him. Vucevic is just now getting started, so he potentially could pass him at that point. You try to go away from a chalkier LeBron. Maybe you move to Sabonis. for this one. Maybe you go from Sabonis to Brogdon and see if you can do a 2v2 somehow. Try to get two guys that are going to, overperform their projections in a meaningful way. That can help you make up some ground. Those are the questions that, it's hard to start thinking with those calibrations, right? Because you can't start just saying, oh man, there go my lineups. It's like, but wait, we have a lot of other, there's still a lot of PMR. Granted, a lot of it's locked up in cheap players that it's going to be hard to move from, but what do you start doing differently? And that's something that I like watching our other hosts that are, or our other contributors that are on the show with you. I'm learning a lot with what Greg mentions, and in particular what Eric Lindquist mentions. You guys got to listen to the Slate Starter podcast. If you can't listen to that, no worries, because of course I know we're doing like 8 hours a day for NBA content during the weekday, but check out his Slate Starter article. He has some nice little things in there, and he talks about some of the late swap stuff that he's doing. He has the last 3 days, I think. So that's something that's definitely worth checking out. So we have tons of content. We're just trying to use these moments to help point you into these other areas where you can maybe advance your skill set to the next level, because Chris, the field gets sharper and sharper every day.
It does. And I mean, if Embiid goes down, I don't think there's anything like swap demise wise you could do. I mean, I will say from the top of my process, one thing that I always try to do with my sorting, and we talk about sorting a lot. I know Terry and I have discussed it a good amount in some of the shows, as EMac mentioned earlier. It starts for me in the sorting process in the beginning, where if an Embiid goes down and we're all suffering, me along with, I don't know what the percentages were that played him, but I have to presume above 30% or 40%. Whoever played him today, like for me, the way that I'm different from them right away is I bake in a way where I'm crunching based upon getting, or I'm sorting rather, based upon getting one guy projected under 10% ownership in every lineup. So my hope is then if an Embiid goes down but has a mediocre day, or if he caps out today, if we don't see another minute from him at 39 fantasy points, my hope then is I'll have one guy who's different from everybody else who has an outlier day. Michael Carter-Williams not helping out with being that guy right now, but that's sort of my process from the jump. So that's just one thing to consider here in addition to swap-demizing. I know our pal Eric Lindquist does mention a lot that if you have a lot of Embiid today, maybe it's a move to swap one guy who is going to be chalky as well to get away from it. So that's something you consider now if Embiid's ceiling is going to be capped meaningfully, and you're probably chasing a lot of Jokic lineups because Jokic is already about 10 points higher and could stand to go higher. Steven Adams might even catch Embiid. So good for Steven Adams. Wait, Tyler, how do you think Steven Adams feels about Joel Embiid about catching him in fantasy points for the day?
He's probably not too happy, mate.
You think he's not happy? You think he's like, oh man, I'm so bummed that Embiid's not playing well and I'm as good as Joel Embiid for the day? You think I guess he supports the community of NBA players more than anything.
Yeah, we will see. These are good ones though, Chris. This is a good way to think about it. And you're absolutely right. Tonight it's going to be hard the way we have our rosters constructed and such, but it's worth the thought exercise, because this is something you guys can utilize to the next time a key player goes down. What is the first reaction? And I think for most of it's to type out snippy comments in whatever chat platform we're using, or a woe is me moment on Twitter. But what we really need to be thinking about is, how can I adjust from this? And that's something I think Greg and Eric do a great job, especially like with sports betting and stuff like that. Like if in-game wagering, you just saw this, maybe do you roll a little bit to, because you can get the points and stuff with in-game wagering, maybe do you roll a little bit to the Washington side? Maybe they come on a 5-0 run, you can cash it out for 10 or 15%. That's the other little fun parts that you can do with the sports wagering, which I am just learning about myself. So it's great having Greg and Eric and Ben Rossa and all those different people to bounce questions off of, because this whole cashing out of your bet early, which is allowed. Sometimes the sites will take it away depending on the flow of the game or what's going on, but sometimes they're trying to entice you. They want to get out of it. You want to lock it in early from an outcome that's incredibly unlikely to happen and get 85% of your bet instead of the full 100. They'll let you do it, which is just an interesting way of thinking about things. But sometimes you can get that little nibble of 10-15% and just take it.
So here's go back to the Rockets now that we now that my line has been crippled by poor Joel Embiid potentially. Though
it's 62%. What did you have?
I had 87%.
All right, it looks like the field on DK is between 50 and 60, depending on your tournament of choice.
So yeah, look, I'm only you got to trust the guy. Play the best plays is always, one thing I try to do here. And when accounting for ownership and all of that, there was maybe a case, but we had Vooch projected for 25. We had Jokic picking up a good amount of ownership too. So I went the way I went, and I'll stand by it. Me and Joel Embiid, ride or die. And here's hoping that the process that he can heal himself up and get back out there. We got Ben McLemore, and I think one thing to note about him, he's due for a better day shooting. I don't know that it comes against a Utah team who gives up 35% from deep, and really the one thing their claim to fame is that they're very good defensively. But for him on the year, he's only shooting 49% true shooting. Going back to last year, he's a 59% true shooter. It is one of the numbers to me in this spot. This is kind of it's not a get well spot, but it's a spot where you just need him to shoot and need him to shoot his way out of it and do the best he can. So I'm a little more bullish on McLemore than EMac seemed to be earlier. I think that for the main slate, I ended up tied with the ownership, but for my night slate lineups, I put him in. I think all the ones I put in just because I feel like his price point allowed me to get to guys. And I think this is one thing to talk about EMac, where for the main slate, I felt like a 3 rocket max was really what seemed appropriate to me. For night slates, as we talked about yesterday, I think there's enough opportunity here where I don't mind getting to 4 or 5 rockets in the hopes that, if you run it back with a Mitchell or a Gobert or somebody, they just keep the game close enough. And then you can afford your Sabonis, you can afford your LeBron, you can afford all the guys who are projected well, who have the floor and the ceiling that you want to see. To me, that's the approach I'm taking for the night slate, EMac, but I have pretty good confidence in Sterling Brown. I think Kenyon Martin Jr., for whatever he is as a player, it hasn't shown much so far, but I think he does enough of everything that fantasy-wise, I'm not terrified of it. He's also not unafraid 3-point shooter. He's shooting 40% in his limited sample size of that. So, not a guy that you want to be putting up a bunch of shots, but he's going to have to take some today. I just feel like for me, the approach EMac is going to be playing a lot of rockets and then just getting the best plays, guys who feel safe. And the rest of the parts here, Sabonis, LeBron, Brogdon, Mitchell, like Gobert, I think these are the guys I'm prioritizing. But you seemed less into the McLemores, the Tates, the Browns, all these guys. How are you handling it? How many rockets is too many for you on a night slate?
As many as I get is fine. I'm going through right now and capping ownership on them. I'm trying to, Gobert was 68%. I was hoping he'd be more like 50 something, but the 50 something person is Sabonis. So I'm going to try to get 70% of him, just to be different on the night slate. But I would also like, if I've got him, I would like to have at least 2 Lakers or LeBron in those lineups. So I may have to do some lock button and build 2 or 3 lineups at a time real quick here. Sterling Brown's going to be the guy for me where I'm going to go over the field on amongst the Rocket players, just the way things are shaping up.
Oh, Derek White has been terrible, huh? Okay.
Oh, was at negative last I saw.
That makes me feel better about my Michael Carter Williams there. So hopefully that'll work out for everybody involved. Yeah, I think so. Who would be your priority plays? Like, let's say you're playing X amount of rockets, and I'm with you on Sterling Brown. On the year, he's been a 0.81 fantasy point per minute guy, but can assist more, can rebound more, can knock down a few more shots. Like, he does enough of everything here where the one concern is if this game does blow out, I think he's the first guy who sees less minutes because he's really the only player who's been a starter besides Jayshawn Tate, who's young enough that they want to get him some run still. But I agree. I think Sterling Brown's a strong play and maybe a little bit forgotten ownership wise. Did you get to Anthony Lamb and Nwaba at all? I guess while we're just talking about the rest of the Rockets.
No, there will be no Nwaba. I am convinced he is not going to take the court. I would rather play David Horton. How am I even doing this? Talen Horton Tucker. Yeah. He's right next to David Nwaba in Fantasy Cruncher.
Isn't David Horton's like a Canadian coffee shop?
It's no, it's if you wouldn't have said it, I would have known. It's not John Hortons.
Tim Hortons,
yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes, you are correct. There are a few around. I don't know if they've done away with them in the States. There's sometimes you could find them in the north, closer to the border. They might it's basically their version of Starbucks combined with McDonald's.
I hope that one day Talen Horton Tucker is the first guy we think about alongside Tim Horton and Horton Here's a Who. Those are all the Hortons I can think of.
There is Horton Here's a Who. That's very nice.
Easily the most famous of the Hortons right now, besides Tim. priority plays for the guys who actually cost money, who aren't Rockets today, EMac. And I said some of these guys, but I feel like let's just try to, well, basically give you guys the lineup, I guess, that we're building. But Rudy Gobert, to me, is one guy that projects fairly well at center. I like Sabonis at center for DraftKings, where he has the dual position eligibility, power forward center. But I think Gobert, and I can get Sabonis in one of the other forward spots. That makes sense to me. Those are the guys I'm prioritizing alongside LeBron. And then Markieff Morris, I think, is still not a bad value starting again in this spot. He's been shooting well, playing well fantasy-wise for the last few games before the All-Star break. I don't know how much that matters. He's not as good as a value to me as the Rockets guys, because those guys have to be relatively competent because they're just going to see the court time. But Markieff Morris, I think, would be one play that I wouldn't mind. But to me, the priorities, EMac, are going to be LeBron, Sabonis, and also Gobert. Is there any other pay up priority for you here? And we could talk a little bit about some of the lower projected plays, but I just want to get your best projected plays that you're building around.
No, those would be my three most owned players, because I've capped some of the other guys. So now it makes me get some Kyle Kuzma. I'm getting a little Alex Caruso, just some guys I wasn't expecting. The one guy I'm okay with on Houston also going over is Jae'Sean Tate, just a little bit. Just because I think he's a little more of a do-everything kind of guy. And if somebody gets in foul trouble and it's not him, I feel he can back up at least the 2, 3, and 4 relatively easily tonight.
Yeah.
Really?
So David Nwaba available to play, but there are reports that he's not going to be able to really handle the ball and do anything. And available to play could just mean that he's active. So no, I mean, Tyler, I'm not mad at you. Don't just saying it for the audience out there. It's not just being mean to you for the sake of it. I think I wouldn't play Nwaba, or if I did play Nwaba, I wouldn't expect him to be the guy we've seen in the past who is a capable backup point guard who can do, who whenever John Wall or Oladipo have been out, or just, they've been not playing because of getting blown out. Nwaba's been that guy who can show a really big rebound upside, a really big assist upside. In this spot, though, with the wrist injury, I would have concern that he's just active. So they have the 8 bodies, and Houston doesn't care about losing right now. They'd rather lose these games. So for them, they're motivated to just play a game, even when they probably shouldn't, as we've seen some teams go the other way where they don't want to play and will have guys pretend to be injured or whatever when they have some health protocol ruleouts. For me, EMac, I still wouldn't play Nwaba even if he's active. And if it burns me, so what? But do you feel any differently about Nwaba being in the mix, or do you feel like he even sort of takes anything away if he plays, let's say, 10, 12 minutes?
No, because I played James Wiseman last night, and who was the other guy I played that got, or was it last night or 2 nights ago? And so I played somebody else that took a 0 that didn't get off the bench. The hell? So Wiseman would find out why, because he missed 2 days worth of COVID testing during the All-Star break because he forgot. I get that you need to embarrass him and all of that, but wouldn't it have been more fun to announce it and embarrass him than just handle it internally and not let him off the bench until midway through the telecast? They said, Wiseman's not going to play tonight. I don't know. Yeah. So just saying, no David Nwaba. Yeah, we've seen too many times where people dress just to, especially in these types of situations where they have no intention of bringing him off the bench. And as for my Ben McLemore, I've got 40% of him on the main slate. So vaya con Dios, mis amigos. I don't have any accents. That was pretty bad. My accents are only worse than my pronunciation.
I mean, look, it's hard to top Tyler now that we set the bar there. That's the main thing. I just don't have the confidence in Nwaba, really. And if you want to play him, especially this guy in the chat who's been a dick to everybody, Austin, feel free to play him today. Play him 100%. I hope you do, in fact. But everybody else who is not toxic and non-contributing member to the community here, I hope you don't play Nwaba, because I just don't have the confidence in his minutes being there. But it's going to be your risk, your reward. So do what you want to do there.
I mean, when you're confident like that, I mean, you should go all in. These are your spots that you go above the field. If you think Nwaba is going to be the guy and nobody else does, and you want to be different from Houston, I highly recommend you going down this path. It is not one I'm going to go down, but then again, I'm a fish, right? So you should definitely all in. Chips in the middle.
It's always a good idea to play guys who might have had surgery a week ago or were rumored to be having surgery. It's just you're playing narrow margins here, and he's also not that cheap. If you're flat minimum, from a DFS perspective, maybe you could make the argument. But even when Awesemo had him projected for minutes earlier, it was only for a 12-point projection, which at 4,300 on DK is probably not going to get you there, barring a very minuscule outcome. And DFS and betting and all these things that we talk about on here are trying to find the biggest ways to be correct, not the smallest ways. anyways. So that's generally the approach here.
So back to the Nwaba thing. So I pulled up a couple articles here, and one of them was on the whatever the version of the Houston Rockets fan letter is, or it's a little more stable than that. But basically, I think it was just poorly worded. So there's two facts. He has a wrist injury. He's going to likely miss 4 to 6 weeks. Surgery is a potential. But the way they've structured the sentence, it sounds in some of the articles I pulled up that they're now citing that article as saying he did already have the surgery. And that was back on the 3rd. We would know if he had the surgery, right? Yeah. They would just say it at this point. It's not like they need to hide it or anything. So he may not have had it, right? They wait, is swelling going to go down? Is it really going to change the timetable?
Or they do like a little rehab instead to try to avoid surgery or something. Yeah.
Right. Can he come back in 8 weeks instead of 6, but not have to have surgery? And there's a myriad of reasons why they would do this, but interesting. So that, I think that's where some of our confusion is coming from is a poorly worded article.
Yep, and you just got to figure it out as best you can. It's all you can do with the news out there, and especially in the modern NBA of this year, not the best. Jacob Kimball has been talking about TJ McConnell all game long, and he is a guy who has spiked tournament upside in the past. EMac and projection-wise, I think the issue for me with McConnell on the main slates, I got 2% of him today, which is fine if the price point works, and I'd feel the same way on the night slate as well, but still only for me a 4.5x projection, and that's with giving him a goose to his assist rate, which has been phenomenal, pretty much in every situation. I just don't have the confidence that he gets the minutes or he's going to get 27 minutes, but he needs to really get like 35 minutes or have a weird outlier steals game or have something like that to break the right way. Is there any reason for you, EMac? I mean, again, for me, I'm playing a handful of lineups, so I just don't see that being the spot where you play TJ McConnell. But I think if you're playing a bunch of them, do you feel like TJ McConnell's a play worth getting above the field on just because we know he's been a tournament breaker and this Lakers team is not the same Lakers team missing all the bodies that they are?
Yes. So we have him at about 10% on DK for the late slate. I have gone to 20. I have him in a couple lineups where he's just getting in. And then I specifically built some with him, Sabonis, LeBron, and Schroeder. And then I moved one of them out and I made another one where I put in Sabonis. So of those 5 guys, I kind of circled through 4 different lineups where one of them was not in each of them. But I made sure I was going to be above on McConnell. He doesn't project well. We're looking for incredible variance. We're not going to see 10 steals from him again, but we could see a nice outing. And what if how many times have we seen teams go into Utah and just, it's like they're running in quicksand. They're on, Houston's on a back-to-back. They're shorthanded. It's a bunch of new guys with barely any experience. What if they only score 87 points tonight? What if it is some of the other people from Indiana that does a little better? They have not equally tough, but they don't have the best matchup either. But what if we aren't getting it from the Jazz? What if it's equally spread amongst everybody and they all get like 25 fantasy points? Yay. Does that help us? Probably not. So we'll see. These are the eventualities we're looking for, but I have 30 lineups and he is on 6 of them.
We got a question here about Damian Jones from our pal Brad Levine. How do we feel about the Lakers big man? He's minimum salary on DK, and I get it. I have him better projected than Awesemo does. He's got him at 7 fantasy points. I've got him at 12. But even at 3K, like he's not popping up relative to the Rockets guys. So if you're not going to play a Rocket, and I know EMac is something that you mentioned yesterday, the idea of that, citing some of Alex's previous videos, but just not playing any Rockets. If you're not playing a Rocket, I feel like playing Damian Jones makes sense. But otherwise, I don't see the reason to get to Damian Jones unless you're just trying to get different, or if you're playing enough lineups, you'll get there. But
I had him capped at 0, but Fantasy Cruncher said, no, we're putting him in one of your lineups. So I have him in one of my 30.
Yeah, I mean, Brad has him getting 20. If you have him getting 22 minutes, maybe that looks better. But at 15, he doesn't pop up for me. And
give him 22 minutes at 0.75 fantasy points per minute. Is that worthwhile? You're costing yourself your center spot. Who else is going to play there? Well, Gobert, but if you're not playing Gobert at all, it's not really costing you. You can put some bonus there. And then after that, it's Miles Turner, who we're not doing cartwheels over because, 2 or 2.5 for blocks on, it's 2 for blocks on DK, or is it 1.5? I forget. I know it's 3 on FanDuel and Yahoo, but he's not as impactful there. And that's the Turner upside to getting there. So I don't dislike it. And as much as we're saying, just use caution on the Houston guys, they're still going to be far superior plays to any of those guys, even in one of the worst matchups, just because they're so many of them are so cheap, and just mathematically they each have to play 23 minutes or whatever the math works out to. That's hard to pass on for there, but it's whack-a-mole time. Do you know which Houston guy's going to do well? I don't.
Yeah, and for whatever it's worth, Awesemo has Harold getting 24, Damian Jones getting 14. So maybe there is some way that one of those guys gets hot and earns a little bit more run to get the full 48 of big man minutes. But there hasn't been enough from Damian Jones to feel the most confident. He's only been a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy this year. So really not showing enough for me to feel like he's a play viable. Compared to the Rockets guys who have to do something, Jones could easily do nothing out there and just be there from a size perspective. Let's see. Antoine Murphy saying two Rockets max sack the Pacers Lakers game. EMac, what'd you have?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, so here's where I ended up on DK again, 30 lineups just for posterity, because we're going to be at lock by the time you guys hear this. 70% is a bonus, 60% Gobert. Even though I wanted more, I didn't get more. 23 Harrell, 10 Turner, 3 Patton, 3 Favors, and 3 Damian Jones. That's percentages. That means I'm not playing any or maybe only 1 or 2 lineups with multiple centers.
All right, there you go. And
5 of my lineups will have multiple centers. That's it.
I feel like we covered everything here. Let's check to see if we have any last minute questions. Down 40. Welcome back, Kevin Love. I don't think Kevin Love will get back in, or is he already in? No, I hope he gets a few more minutes here. The 10-minute cap for Kevin Love seemed like a tough one. Also, I have to just take one L real fast before we jump off. Michael Carter-Williams is playing absolutely terribly, and I'm so mad at him. I'm so disappointed in him, really more like a parent.
I thought we'd seen him turn around. I made sure I got 25% on DK. What was he, 6,000 compared to 49 on FanDuel?
He was definitely a better play
he's 49
on paper, but 6,000. I just thought it was a nice price point people wouldn't get to, and that's the nature of the beast. But hey, we will be back tomorrow. So first of all, last call for that Shamrock promo for the day. Go over to awesemo.com/join. Use that. You'll get half off a week of Awesemo Plus. Tomorrow, we'll be back with the strategy show. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't know who it is. It's got to be somebody great tomorrow.
It's going to be, I think it's Adam and Alex on Saturday.
I think so, but I didn't pull it up here. So just, it'll be somebody great tomorrow. Tomorrow, subscribe to the channel with the notification bell so you'll see that. I'll be back on the deeper dive tomorrow with Rinpack. Then EMac and Terry will be coming up. So watch that. Make sure to follow at EMac DFS, follow at Chris Spags, follow at Awesemo_com. EMac, any final words before we call it quits?
No, don't forget, we also have NASCAR and MMA shows tomorrow and NHL. So we have you covered. It looks like we've got about 9 hours of programming. Enjoy.
Yep, we got a lot going on here, guys. So enjoy your nights. If you're not coming back, have a great weekend. We'll see you guys again soon. Good luck.